Talk Show. Recorded live.
Hello, and welcome to the Castle Dracula podcast. On this podcast, we talk about horror movies, vampire movies, and all-around awesomeness. And this week, we continue our Evil Baby retrospective with a look at the second movie in the Omen trilogy, the original trilogy, Damien Omen 2, 1978, this time starring William Holden, Lee Grant, and Jonathan Scott Taylor as Damien. Bear in mind that if you haven't seen today's movie, we're going to be talking about it from the perspective of horror fans who have, so warning, spoilers ahead. I'm your host, Jason Henderson, author of the brand new Alex Van Helsing adventure, Triumph of Death, in hardback and ebook from HarperCollins, so look for it at Amazon or your local store. With me are Drew Edwards, creator of the long-running webcomic Halloween Man, which you can find at HalloweenMan.com. HalloweenMan.com. Say hello, Drew.
Hello.
Hello. And I'm sorry I blew your URL. Tony Salvaggio, creator of Psycom Book 3, coming this August 21st, from Right Stuff and Tokyo Pop. That's a manga. Say hi, Tony.
Howdy.
And with color commentary from the one and the only attorney, Julia Guzman. Say hello.
Good evening.
Good evening. It's not even a vampire movie, and you pull out the good evening. Okay.
But it's Castle Dracula, so
it is the Castle Dracula podcast. That's true. It is conceivable in a world of ideas that there could be one person for whom this is the first episode of this show that they've ever heard. Okay, Damien Omen 2 tells the story of Damien, the boy who Gregory Peck learned in the first movie is actually the son of the devil, here to fulfill the prophecy and bring about the end of the world. Damien survived the events of Omen 1 and is now living with with Gregory Peck's brother, millionaire industrialist William Holden, Holden's lovely wife, Lee Grant, and a kind brother named Mark. The movie follows two plots. In one plot, Damien goes to military school where he learns his true destiny and has to grapple with whether he wants to take on the mantle of Satan. He is aided always by protectors of Satan who can fill any role in life, teacher, mentor, anyone. In the other plot, members of the forces of good learn key facts about Damien and race to either confront or stop him, but the powers of Satan, often literally appearing as a raven that can trigger catastrophic accidents, heart attacks, and the like, consistently stymie their efforts. And by the end, when Damien's adoptive parents are dead and he stands ready to inherit millions, the pattern of Omen 1 has been continued. Damien is sailing through life, getting a good education in the best places, and no one seems capable of stopping his satanic ascent. So, Damien, Omen 2, we are 2 out of 3 because we are going to finish this trilogy because I need a happy ending. What are our first impressions of Damien Omen 2? Let's go once again. Julia, and then the males in alphabetical order, Drew and Tony, and then me because I always go last for reasons that seem unfair. Next time I'll switch it around. Julia, go first.
All
first
right.
Impressions.
Well, I remember that I watched this movie many years ago, and the fact that there's like two scenes in it that have always just stuck with me is both a good thing and a bad thing, which means
give us a hint. What are the two scenes?
Well, they're the one that I just always think of, and that's how I was like, I knew that I had seen it, because I'm like, well, there's that scene with the ice skating where the guy goes under, and I can't remember which character it was, goes under the ice, and then and that's just like stuck, burned in my brain, the guy just kind of floating under the ice. Oh, so creepy. And then the other one is the poor doctor getting sliced in half by the elevator. I mean, it's just in my brain. So those two things have made me think that this movie was really great, when in fact it's just that it has some really scary moments. It does have some scary-ass moments, if you pardon my French. I guess I should say scary derriere moments.
I think it's okay to use language on this podcast.
No, I just mean, like, if I'm going to actually be speaking French. Of course, that's not proper French, but whatever. Anyway, so I think that it's got some really scary moments, and actually kept me up this last night thinking about them a little bit. But I mean, it's not the best film ever, as I'm sure that we'll hear from our other two folks already have heard.
All right.
But it's scary, so it's okay.
One scary okay vote. Drew, first impressions. Damien Omen 2.
Meh. Should have stopped with the first one.
Just literally meh. You regret that they made a Damien Omen 2.
This is like, okay, yes, the elevator scene is a righteously awesome splatterpunk moment, and an otherwise, like, like I love the first Omen so much. Like I think it's such a great movie, and this is literally my first impression because I'm like the countless other movies that we've watched for this podcast. I had never seen this movie before, and I kind of wish I could erase it from my memory.
You're just kidding.
Such a disappointment. I mean, I was excited to do this, and it had Lance Henriksen in it, and Lance Henriksen is awesome, but it doesn't even really sync up well with the first movie in my mind. Like, it tonally feels very different. The way Damien's abilities are portrayed is very different. His knowledge of his abilities appears to at least be very different. And I just, maybe if it was just kind of a standalone movie, I might like it better as sort of a 70s, gore movie, because that's basically what this is. And the first one's got so much more going for it. But, man, what a just...
I think this really save some of that, because we're going to get right into some of the discussion of why you think it works. So I get your thesis. Your thesis is, why did it sully my memory of an excellent horror movie with this sort of oddly put together splatterpunk movie? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Tony, your first impressions of Damien Omen 2.
It's okay. It wasn't. I mean, it's got a bunch of great moments, but I have to agree with Drew that, like, what I'm surprised though, Drew, is that you never read enough about it where everybody's like, Damien Omen 2, really?
The thing is, if you like the kind of movies that we like, you just kind of, and you too, Tony, if you like the kind of movies that we watch an awful lot of, you just kind of get used to the fact that when you look the movie up, it's not going to have a lot of good reviews. And so
I guess
I am, unfortunately, those do not inoculate me against a bad movie.
Well, there's a lot of great moments, but overall, like, it doesn't feel, it's like, he's like, it's all over the place. And the things that are there are like, they're super on the nose. Everything's dun dun dun, dun dun dun.
Yeah.
Like, not that there aren't a lot of crazy musical cues in the first one, but this one, it's just, all of it's that. And it doesn't even make a lot of sense. Like, a lot of the times he does stuff, you're like, isn't that going to make more people wonder why is everybody around you dying?
Yeah.
Really, really, really poor way to, like, not call attention to yourself if you do actually know you're the Antichrist.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and since Satan is kind of doing it for him, or Satan's minions.
Well, like, that's the thing, is like, why does it even matter if Satan can just kill everything? That's like, what's the point? Like, Satan just kind of goes like, man, this guy needs to be eliminated, and him, and her, and I'll do this to him.
Well, what I said was that I don't like that there's not ever a battle. There's no battle in this movie.
No.
There's God isn't getting any licks in, or even trying.
Well, okay. So let me do this as my first impressions. We can go straight into it. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, my final thing is that if anyone from any of the Final Destination movies says they've never seen this movie, I'm not one to call people a liar, like, oh, I've never watched that. Because sometimes, Drew's never seen it before. But somebody somewhere had to at least have seen a compilation. This feels like the prototype for the Final Destination movie.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? I like the first Final Destination movie. I did not like this movie.
That's interesting.
Okay, well, by that time, you've already seen it done probably much more savvy, right? Like, you've seen Final Destination. There's not a really good reason to see this, other than I do really like the elevator scene's awesome, and I will have to say that
you could probably look that up on YouTube and not have to watch the rest of the movie.
But the thing is, I would want to watch the movie so I could see the whole trilogy, so I could, like, see the beginning and the middle and the end, just as a sort of obsessive who wants to see the whole thing. I wouldn't want to just watch Meshach Taylor get cut in half. That effect gets done better in hardcore anyway. Well, but not hardcore. I'm sorry, hardware.
The ice scene is pretty iconic and has been cribbed.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if they cribbed it from somewhere, and I want to say maybe I'd seen that before, but after that, it certainly, and that is, because that's so realistic. Like, that's a thing that is horrible.
Mm-hmm.
It's not in a horror movie. That could happen, and that would be awful and
Yeah.
chilling, literally and figuratively, but terrible, terrible thing, you know. So anyway, I guess on to your first impressions, Jason.
Well, no. I'll just do a very short one so we can get back into it, because I think you guys did great. I could swear there's a movie called The Legacy where they do that with the ice, but they might have instead, it might have been done with, for some reason they had like some kind of a clear cover over a swimming pool. Anyway, there was a death similar to this, but it was in a big natatorium. But okay, all right, very quickly, and then I want to get right into it. I really enjoyed this movie, but I kind of felt like I was watching one movie that really was on the edge of being something really interesting that could have been like a whole series, and that's the one about this kid coming of age and realizing that he's bound to be, the Antichrist, and he's bound to take over the earth, and that was really interesting. And I felt like they didn't give enough time to that because they also were doing this other movie that was completely plotless. Basically, one person after another learns facts about Damien, and then Satan literally reaches down to the earth and causes bad accidents to happen. And it's all very crude. I mean, it's all like, I remember on The Simpsons where they did this whole thing where Krusty the Clown has a gag where, a thing of water is going to fall over onto somebody's head every time a door gets open. But he plays it for the audience. He always goes, and pointing it out. Exactly the same thing here. You see the gags being set up. You see they play the elevator note for a long time before Meshach Taylor gets cut in half. And so you know what's coming. All of these. Whereas when David Warner got beheaded in the first movie, that came from nowhere. you see that, you see the truck moving, or likewise, there's an element of horror. If you look at like The Doll Maker, when the girl gets run over by a train, you are afraid she's going to get run over by a train, and you're very, very afraid. And in this, all of these just kind of have an exploitative feel, which sounds like I didn't like the movie, and yet for all of that, I actually really kind of enjoyed this movie. I thought, look how much Hollywood can spend making a really schlocky horror movie, because this is an expensive, beautiful-looking, prestige picture with expensive stars. William Holden's one of the biggest stars in Hollywood history. Lee Grant. Who is Lee Grant the mother of? I'm trying to remember now.
You said, I can't remember now. I'll look it up.
All right. Well, anyway.
Oh, it was you know what? It was Mary. It was Marty Maraschino. What, Marty?
Oh yeah. Dinah Manoff of Grease, and and William Holden. Meshach Taylor. This is his first movie. Lou Ayres. There's all these people Robert Foxworth, who used to be on TV all the time. So it's this fantastic cast, and it's beautiful, and there's giant houses with lots of marble, and I don't know. It just looks, so for all the wealth and and all that stuff, it really looks like a biopic about the Kennedys, except for that they keep cutting back to different gory deaths of random people. So but if I didn't know that there's a third movie where God quits playing the long game and actually gets involved in fighting back, then I would kind of be ho-hum about it. But the fact, with this, looking at this as not the end, I'm kind of okay. So that that took too long.
Well, so the third one has Sam Neill, and I have a feeling that that's going to be all kinds of awesome.
It promises to be awesome or awesomely bad. Either way, I'm definitely down for the third one. So let's get straight into really getting deeper into is this what a sequel is supposed to be? What is a sequel supposed to be, and is this a good one? Like, horror movies are all about sequels, right? There's always a Roman numeral 2 after the most famous ones. There's Friday the 13th Part 2. Is this a good sequel or a bad sequel?
I think it's a bad one in the fact that the tone is just doesn't really work for me. I mean, Damien's like sometimes he's like a psychic supervillain. He can attack people with his mind, and then there's the devil's just killing people randomly. And the first one had freaking hellhounds. This one has a crow that they just keep going. And one time the crow doesn't even do anything. It just looks menacingly at his grandmother, and she's like, "Oh no, a crow!"
I love that it was what's her face from Beetlejuice, though. That made me way happier than it should have.
No, that's awesome. She's great, and she's a great character too.
Well, and then it goes all the birds on what's her name in the road, and just starts pecking the heck out of her, which is just terrifying. But I was like, well.
By the way, they talk about she's on a deserted. That happens on a deserted highway. It's like, yeah, the deserted highway next to the school where she just asked people about Damien, but they act like nobody would ever track anything down. Like, that's weird. She's on a deserted highway. It's like
right.
The one next to the school where she actually went and said, "Hey, is that Damien?" And no one.
A deserted highway out by our kids' school. Yeah, good point.
Like,
that's a good point.
So much of that where you're like, that doesn't even. Why would?
Well, also that's the woman that we were just very upset about. You know, in case the listener doesn't know what the heck we're talking about, there is a reporter who's obsessed with Damien, and she has proof that Damien is the Antichrist, and she just sort of infuriates one member of Damien's family after another because nobody wants to believe that Damien is the Antichrist. And she finally goes out to his school, and then on the way back. How does this happen? Satan makes her car break down, and then the crow plucks her eyes out, and then she gets hit.
Well, it messes up her hair really bad, which is the worst. Then she's off on the side, and then for some reason, which I will never understand, she hears a truck coming and decides to wander out into the middle of the road waving. And I'm like, really? You think that's the best plan?
But, it was a pretty good effect. That was a pretty decent dummy.
Dude, that when she gets run over, I was cringy. I knew it was a dummy. It's obvious it's a dummy, but holy crap, that looks terrible. It
was a good dummy. I mean, I liked this a lot better than the Rob Zombie effect because Zombie did the same trick.
Right.
And
why wouldn't Satan just make her swerve into oncoming traffic?
Why wouldn't Satan just give her an aneurysm like he gave the old lady? I mean,
obviously he thinks she deserves more because the old lady is just thinks that he's creepy and that he needs to be separated from her grandson. But this woman actually is has gone out there and has verified that yes, in fact, he is the Antichrist. So I guess the punishment is worse depending on how much proof you have.
Can we talk about the Satan wall? This movie opens up with, I know they're supposed to talk about whether this is a good sequel, but I'll pretend that this is tied to that question. After all of the extremely sort of staid and old-fashioned effects and everything of or not effects, but effect, the old-fashioned feel of the first movie, this one opens up with a couple of archaeologists at a cafe talking about whether or not
it's Bugenhagen from the first movie.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's the guy Bugenhagen from the beginning, and he's going to have.
And in the commentary, it said that when he was driving the Jeep all crazy, he actually fell out of the Jeep. The actor.
Right. So he goes. This one archaeologist goes to another archaeologist, says, "Come see this wall with a whole bunch of ancient Babylonian and various prophetic art that you got to check out." And they go check it out, and it's got sculptures. And by the way, that opening scene, I have to say, the one thing it reminded me of more than anything else is the opening scenes of Behind the Green Door, which would be very, very soon before this. It looks exactly the same, except for, and it starts out with the two guys sitting there in a seaside cafe going, "I heard a story." Only in this one, it's, not about the Green Door, but about a wall of Satan art. And so off they go to see the wall of Satan art. And this is an ancient, Indiana Jones style archaeological dig. They're under the ground. And on this ancient wall, next to a statue of the Whore of Babylon, which is a kind of a big old dragon, is basically somebody's airbrushed side of a custom van with Damien's head in it.
It's ancient art, by not that era. The era they're trying to say, even the sculpture just doesn't look none of
So you question the authenticity of Yagail's wall, do you?
None of that art, not even a bit of it fit to it. They're like, and it's just like a cathedral.
It does look a bit Dungeons and Dragons.
It totally does. It's this airbrushed picture of baby Damien with snake hair, with Gorgon hair.
I was like, it doesn't even look. All right, I've had the benefit of going to art school and taking, art history classes, and I like none of it, like, because at first, like, they had ancient things, and the first one all seemed to kind of fit.
I bought that stuff. Sure. What do I know about sculpture? So yeah, okay.
Just like none of it. I'm like, I don't even. Who made that? When? Like what? I don't even understand. And it's in a totally separate place than kind of the way like presented it the first time. It's just a really good. They really kind of, as much as I like the movie, they really alien freed him. Like, and hey, he's here. Well, he's, how do we get him? Oh, let's cover him with sand. But and the poor guy he drags there. He's like, I don't want anything to do with this. This is crazy town. People are gonna laugh me off. Like, they're not gonna talk to me. They're gonna laugh at me. And he's like, no, come see.
Come look at the wall and we'll die together. Yeah, no, that was so. I mean, I really was sad that they died so quickly. I mean, like, they didn't get to do any. I think the kind of a theme throughout the movie for me is that every time somebody dies, it's so quickly after they find out the thing, and I'm just like, it's just.
It's kind of a flaw, actually. I mean, just that it means that really none of the it makes it sort of dull in that sense, because one person after another, it's just the same thing over and over. Whereas you have the interesting story. Go ahead, Tony. I'm sorry.
Sorry, that's why I feel like Final Destination. It's like, hey, and it has awesome things. Like, hey, by the way, man, there's something weird going on with Thorn Holdings. Like, that's strange. What's up with the company? Oh, no, you should go back to your factory. All right. Oh, gosh, the factory is bad. Like, the devil isn't even like, oh, he was driving, or, man, that's weird that,
Oh, that factory thing, that was so, I mean, that one was just so easy to foretell what was going to happen.
Well, I keep remembering the line in The Firm where he says, that you can paraphrase here. It's like, boy, people who come anywhere near Damien Thorne sure are accident prone, because nobody manages to escape. Everybody. But I liked Robert Foxworth, the executive in the I'll say this. I liked Robert Foxworth as the executive who's up and coming and wants to do some kind of vaguely undefined evil stuff involving farmland and famine. Yeah. But I was unclear on that plot and kind of unclear on why it was there. I didn't, I just didn't really understand. It's like, now we're introducing something else. What's going on? Yeah, I get it. I guess you're right, Drew. The deal is that he's bringing famine. He's part of the prophecy, and he's going to bring famine for
Well,
Damien.
He keeps saying famine. There's like, couldn't you think of a less, hey, I'm part of Satan Inc. way of phrasing like that? Like, oh, we're buying up lots of farmland, that kind of thing. Like, but no, he has to say famine.
Yeah, he seems to be. If I understand his business plan properly, as much as I could glean from it, it was that they have this amazing farming technology, and they're going to buy up land in order to not farm, so that there is famine, so then they can sell food. I guess it seems to be something like that.
But you guys, we're going into health, though. I was like, what?
Right. It sounded like we're gonna create famine and then alleviate it. So
maybe
all right.
There was a subtle and here's where we talk about farm subsidies. Like, how's that end up in the script?
Well, it was trying to continue this, I guess, the sort of socio-political backdrop of the first one, but move it into corporate America a little bit.
Yeah.
It just kind of fell apart.
They totally dropped the president thing too.
Yeah, that was one of the things that pissed me off about it. Is the end of the movie, the first movie, has Damien appearing to be adopted by the president.
By the president,
how awesome.
Totally.
Yeah, how awesome.
Well, or at least taken in by him.
Evil.
Yeah, so that's a problem. At the end of the first one, That's how is it as a sequel? At the end of the first movie, Damien is at least taken in by the President of the United States, and in this one, he's been living with his uncle forever. So if you're going to go ahead and ask for continuity, you have to assume that he was with the President for a very brief period, and then went to live with William Holden.
The President had a heart attack or something.
What's awesome is the trivia. William Holden, they approached him for the Gregory Peck character, if I'm not mistaken.
Right. He didn't want to be in a devil movie.
And then the second time, he's like, man, I need some of that sweet devil baby money. Because there were all those movies that
Is that what they call selling your soul?
Yeah.
that is exactly
Nothing
I can't miss
about this... Sorry.
No.
Nothing about this movie really syncs up well with the first one, other than the fact that it's got a character named Damien Thorne. Honestly, it does have a
birthmark of 666.
Okay, yeah.
There's something. It's a sequel. It's just here's the thing, and I wish there's an essay about this somewhere. I mean, it hasn't been written, but I mean, I want to do an essay, but I haven't quite figured out how to put this, so you'll have to help me. But here's what I think. I think a lot of times with the first movie of a good horror movie, the first movie has a very general, universal feel to it that 99% of the people in a given audience all get it. They all go, whoa, that speaks to me personally. I totally get this. I get, like having my baby turn out to be from Satan, or having the guy at the hotel that I checked into turn out to be a killer. And it's universal and it's vague, and a lot of the stuff isn't really nailed down or defined, and it doesn't have to be. But then when you get into sequel universe, because of certain conventions, everything has to be defined more. So whereas before there was like a vague sense that bad stuff happened around the baby, now, or there was like one or two protectors, now we realize there's sort of an army of protectors. And
I would love to have seen, I wish we could have seen like the meetings, the meetings.
No,
of the
precisely.
Well, Lance Henriksen's character seems like he would have been really interesting if he just had more screen time.
Yeah.
He's got two protectors that if that had been part of it, if instead of like random levers turning and weird cars just falling apart or whatever, if they had some more help, like you've got Lance Henriksen, he's looking out, he knows that this kid's Satan. He knows he's the Antichrist, he's helping out. But same with the CEO.
Yeah.
Right.
You're like, oh man,
like that guy could have
cool.
that guy could have been the one to screw with the factory deal, so the whatever it was, 84, whatever it was. I mean, he could have been. Yeah.
Go ahead, Drew.
Here's what bugs me. The first movie, it's like he's killed and he'll kill again. So on some level, the implication is that these deaths are caused consciously.
Right.
By
Damien. But you and I have a disagreement about that. I've never.
Okay,
I never bought that.
Let me. It's dialogue that's in the first movie. In this movie, and there's a sense, there's a general sense that Damien is evil. He is an evil child. Damien is aware that he is evil, and he's just born bad. And
in the first movie.
And this is where it becomes problematic for me, because the way he's portrayed in this is the things just sort of happen around him, and then when he even is finally like, oh, by the way, you're the Antichrist. He has the Peter Parker moment where he's like, no!
Yeah.
And so therefore he has free will. And
right.
He's not just a monster. He could be redeemed. And that becomes very troubling for me. For some reason it just bugs me, because it's like
troubling like it's good horror, or troubling like it's an annoying part of the story.
It's first of all, if it was a different movie, if it was not a sequel to the Antichrist or to the Omen, and you have like a kid grappling with this idea that, okay, you're the son of the devil, and you have these evil urges that you're going to have to fight against. That could be good stuff.
Or not.
And as we've talked about with Rosemary's Baby, you could kind of turn that on its head a little bit, and they kind of did that with Hellboy. And Hellboy has become this big franchise. But this doesn't gel with the way Damien seems in the first movie to me at all.
And here's why I disagree with you. The only reason, because the big argument for Damien being evil in the first movie is that he runs his big wheel into Lee Remick's chair when she's standing on it and knocks her over the thing, right? And he smiles at the funeral. And he smiles at the funeral. However, having said all that, I can pick both of those apart. I can certainly pick apart the big wheel one, because to me the big wheel thing, this is a 4-year-old on a big wheel, and it's more like it's a revved up toy that the nurse just simply opened up a gate and let it fly out. I really did not.
He could have driven around his mom.
Maybe could have.
He wasn't looking up.
He wasn't looking up. I do not attribute to this 4-year-old. You could not put that 4-year-old on trial for doing that. Couldn't do it. And
kids do stuff like that all the time.
They do. They don't have rationality, Drew. They're not going to. They don't know.
Even his quote unquote mother is like, "Don't let him kill me." I mean, he's looking at his mom like she's about to fall. Like, Damien's a bad kid. Like, it's just no other way does that compute to me.
I sit firmly in between this. Like,
I
think in the first one, we discussed it before, I firmly think that he's having flashes of growing into what he is.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he's like every second of the day he's like, I can't wait to rule hell and earth. It's gonna be awesome. Let's kill everything and I'm gonna twist apart rats. Like, he's a kid. He's doing things. He has urges where he's like, hey, I'm gonna do this. He's being slightly led by his nanny. In the second one, it's weird because we start out forgetting that he even smiles at the camera, because by the end of The Omen, I'm with you on that, Drew. I think he's, like, his dad has drug him into the, for sheer self-preservation, he has to grow up earlier, let's say, right? His dad is trying to kill him with knives in a church, and that's really bad. So he kind of knows that he's by the end of The Omen, I'm going to give it to you, he's full on, and he forgets it all. Until he realizes, like, I'm going to make my friend have an aneurysm and just weird various crap, and he runs off.
The Darth Vader moment.
Oh, thank you for saying that, yes.
Moment.
He develops Darth Vader powers in this movie. I thought that was kind of awesome.
He's like a weird, like, telekinetic supervillain, You're like, and he doesn't ever realize he's got this birthmark, like nobody's cut his hair, or, like...
No, because they wouldn't have shaved it, necessarily.
They would if he went to military school.
Well,
there's
that is the
No
problem.
one in production ever went to a military school or had friends who went into the military or anything like that. Obviously, like, it's fine. They all have long hair. No.
Well, maybe the person that shaved his head just died.
That's a crow could have come and visited him too.
Yeah,
or
undoubtedly.
Or a ice truck, or maybe an ice cream truck.
Or maybe it's just one of those schools that just didn't bother with the haircuts.
Oh, it's just so...
They just aren't that...
I mean, it is a very white-collar military school. Maybe they pamper them a little.
No,
but
I can
kind of get behind Tony's
Lance Henriksen would have protected him, too, because remember, Lance Henriksen is one of his protectors. So he would have been like, we're not shaving his head. He's privileged.
His hair, well, I don't know. I don't... Somebody can write in and tell us, because remember, you have all kinds of levels of how short you can have your short hair, but not everybody gets
not when you start. Usually there's you may grow it out X amount, because I have relatives who have been in the military and relatives who have been like in the Corps at A&M.
Yep.
And
they get that buzz cut.
But that's not military school. That's college and the actual Army. I don't know about military school.
So we don't know. Anyway, Tony is probably right about this.
Really, like, no one's noticed this. Maybe, like I said, maybe a crow. Maybe they got hit by an ice cream truck. Maybe an ice cream truck. Any random...
The devil's ice cream truck.
I don't know what.
No, but we see his whole military school career. Cause remember, no, we don't, because he was there previously.
This is just like a year. But
right.
remember, look, the thing is, what Tony said, the way all of this fits together to me is that there is a tradition for this. If you look at like Carrie or the little girl who grows up to be the girl in The Haunting, all of these people have these events in their early childhood that apparently they've both forgotten, but it also shades their whole personality. I guess, and how about this?
Well, that's true in real life too.
I like the movie better if I can make sense out of the fact, if I can accept that Drew. Sorry, did I say Drew? I'm sorry, that Damien.
Oh, thanks, Jason. You're a pal.
If I can accept that Damien is grappling with being the son of Satan, and
are you grappling with that, Drew?
I would have no problem with. I'm grappling with this movie. Is what I'm doing. I would have no problem with that storyline in something that is not a sequel to The Omen. Like
right.
that's really what it boils down to.
But what I'm saying is that you can be free of that. I mean, I'm saying you're reading. You can say, well, that would be reading too much into how evil the kid is in the first movie.
But that's how
it reads
to me. Like, I've seen The Omen, like, quite a few times, and there's no other way for me to conceive that movie. I mean, like, especially you have that part where Doctor Who gets killed, and has, like, the lightning chasing him, and the next scene you have Damien going, pow, 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 almost like he's controlling that lightning. And they
that's not how I read that.
No,
they even go so far as to repeat that in the remake by having him playing a first-person shooter video game.
Right. But even so, the thing is, you have to think about the fact that just because somebody is bad doesn't mean that they should expect to be the son of Satan. I mean, imagine, if you will, that you're a kid who goes around, you're a punk kid who breaks windows and kills, squirrels. And then you find out, oh, my dad was Jeffrey Dahmer. Holy shit. You know what I mean? You were not prepared for that news, even if you're a bad kid. So the fact is, finding out that this big a deal is not, that's not necessarily in keeping with what he's been so far.
Well, here's...
no, it's unacceptable.
Because we're talking about this versus the original. The fact that we were even debating stuff about the original, which I'm sure it's because Richard Donner is a much, much better filmmaker than the two directors that this movie had.
It feels like it has two directors. It feels like two movies to me sometimes.
It did literally have two directors, as I learned.
Honestly, no. What Drew says is correct. For instance, all the military school was directed by one guy, and then all the people getting killed by Satan throwing anvils.
The ice skating thing is also the same guy who did the military school.
And that's pretty astonishing when you think about that. That kind of tells you a lot. They could have done this all over again. I'm not saying they should have, but they could have done this all over again, and there could be a totally different movie that would be a lot more of the awesome stuff in the military. Like, okay, the scene where Damien reveals that he is brilliant, and the history teacher acts as though he's discovered, like, this amazing toy. That is really neat, When
that is a good scene. I will concede to that.
Well, that's what the problem is.
That's a good scene.
There's all of the Final Destination crap, and then there's like the meat of it where you could have done a movie about a kid growing up, even if you could even get away with he's kind of clouded out of his memory because it was traumatic, right? You maybe could get away with that. But the fact is, it does neither of those effectively. And it even goes into melodrama, like everything, like, yes, there's a lot of musical cues in the first one, but everything here, I remember writing down, like, she goes, is that Damien, the wide receiver? And he goes, yes, dun dun, dun dun.
Right. No.
I feel like the producers probably looked at the first one and assumed what people liked about it was the crazy death scenes and not, like, the intrigue aspect of it.
No,
Well, and the music. They thought, oh, hey,
Yeah.
it's got awesome music.
Also, it did make me want to make a bunch of, like, take romantic comedies apart and film, like, extract, like, reaction shots and add that music. So that when they go, like, I love you, ba, 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 and get there, like, some other reaction shot that doesn't even fit. Because it's full of, like, those moments where everything is a musical hit and a reaction shot of, like, horror. Like I said, like, she's watching him play football, and it's as if he's slaughtering everyone with a knife. Like, there's nothing scary about him playing football.
Well, and it should have.
That's scary.
I mean, there's a classiness here that the movie could have chosen to go with, you know, and just spent. In other words, I'm kind of saying that the movie could have been a little bit duller, and thereby probably a little bit more interesting. You know, it probably could have done with about two or three less deaths. Yeah.
I think what you're actually saying is you wish it was a little slower and a like more character-driven.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
yeah, exactly.
I think that's it.
No,
I
exactly.
think that's true.
Well, and any one of the people, I mean, because the thing is, if there, and like I said, I would like to have seen there be some battle, some good versus evil in there. There's no good versus evil. Every good person gets stricken down within seconds. Like, there's never a battle for anyone's. I mean,
they never even get together.
Well, you really care about the characters in the first movie when the mother dies and you see Gregory Peck, you know, and it's that weird shot where it's just him from the side and he looks destroyed.
Yeah,
that's heartbreaking. When you know the guy gets decapitated, the photographer gets decapitated in the first movie, you're upset because you like that character.
Right,
you
that's
don't
absolutely
have
right.
anything like that in this, and frankly though, and sometimes that's okay. You know, I say this as, you know, devotee to the Friday the 13th series, which is all about over the top death scenes. But I'm saying with a movie that where you start out in a series or a movie is very, very much about character.
Right.
You can't turn the second one into a splatter movie, which is what they did.
Especially bothers me that they say in both movies you need to like find Christ, or you need to turn to Christ or whatever to be saved. And the fact is, there's just, I mean, even if you do that, it's not going to happen, because you've got priests, you've got all kinds of people who are all about, you know, Christ, and they still end up with these horrible deaths, and they still don't accomplish anything. So I'm like, that's clearly not the case in this film. That, you know, Christ isn't doing anything in these two. I mean, I'm guessing, I haven't seen the third one, so I don't know how it actually resolves. But in these two, it's like praying and believing and having faith does not help you even in the slightest.
No.
So I don't know. I don't like that message.
It is a very nihilistic universe, isn't it?
But as Mike Nelson was writing about in his book, I can't remember what it was called now, but Mike Nelson, yes, the head writer of MST3K, but he wrote a book about movies, and one of them was that he's always annoyed how these Satan movies take all the satanic stuff of the Bible really seriously, and he's like, well, now hang on. If you got the bad guys, how come we don't have the good guys?
Exactly.
He's like, how come there's no, you know, like in Exorcist 3, they actually went with that. They've got Nicole Williamson as like this gunslinger priest who comes through the door and it slams open and he's ready to take on Satan. There's not a single person like that here. But if you look at this as Act 2 in a 3-act story where you know, Lucifer is playing the short game and God is playing the long game, then Act 3 is where the good guys come in. But I haven't seen it, so it might suck.
Hagen does say that, you know, he's confident that Damien will get his in the end because
that's right.
Because it is written in the Book of Revelation.
Right.
So far, everything's following the prophecy. That would suck too, to know that you're prophesied to turn against God and to lead the earth and to be the Antichrist. And also, by the way, turns out if all that's true, then it also seems to be true that you're going to lose.
You know what I would have liked to have seen at the end instead of what happened? I think, because you recall in the first film, he's told that he can only kill Damien if he's on the altar of the church. Remember with the sword? And then in this one, he takes him to like the hospital or the building, whatever it is, the Thorn building. And I would have liked to have seen it be where he actually gets to where he can actually stab Damien, and Damien just kind of looks at him like, you could try it, but we're not in a church, so it's not going to work. And then, like, he gets stabbed and kind of goes, ha-ha, you know. Right. I mean, instead of having the wife just be another guardian, I mean, another protector.
I do have to say, though, like, her little death rattle where she screams out Damien, for some reason, that was one of the few things about this movie that stuck with me, because I just thought, like, the 5 seconds that she gets to play a psychopath, she was way more interesting than she was in, like, the rest of the film.
Yeah, well,
absolutely.
What a cheap twist, though. Ha ha! You know.
Absolutely, it was played cheap. Whereas if this had been a six, you know, like, or maybe a 22 episode season, you know, and so she would reveal herself maybe like in the last 6 episodes, and then you'd have some, you know, I always want to imagine what would work to make this a little bit better, and I think, you know, yeah. Go ahead.
There's a lot of stuff that could be really interesting. It's, you know, this is why it's so disappointing to me, is like you have a lot of stuff to work with this concept, and they just, you know, and maybe it all just boils down to that Richard Donner was such a sly director, and he left enough things ambiguous to where, you know, you can have countless conversations about how the first movie is, whereas this is just kind of a footnote because it's part of a you know, the franchise that this spawned.
Okay, we have a question from the chat room, and I'm curious about this. Yeah, guest 3 says, you know, these movies give Satan more power than God. So here's my question: in the universe of this movie, and Joy, I didn't mean to interrupt you. We'll get you in a sec. In the universe of this movie, does God have the power to do anything about these things? Is he just not paying attention? What's the deal? Why is Satan active on the earth? And,
well, you guys have already said that it's just a prophecy being played out.
It's just the long game? Yeah. All right.
But, I mean, that's what I'm complaining about that, too, is that there should be people who are able to use God's power, like in The Exorcist. You know, you should be able to have. But the thing is, the problem is that, like you said, if it's a 3-act, if the 3 films are 3 acts, then you can't have him be defeated in an earlier act. Whereas with the Exorcist films, you have each of the people is defeated in that film, and then the devil takes over something different.
You could at least have some kind of confrontation, though, by somebody who's a little bit, because right now Damien's, you know, he's 13 years old. You could have somebody who so therefore he's not fully come into his power. You know, you could have somebody that's a little bit more on the even playing field. Maybe give him, you know, just a little bit of a run,
like a talking to, you know, like say, hey, you know, you need to be good.
Something, you know, like, you know, no one.
Everybody's afraid of him.
Yeah, or, you know, William Holden doesn't even really ever get a chance to get in the same room to do away with Damien. You know,
that's an interesting point. You're right. He really does have very little. The only
one who does is the brother, Mark. Mark actually does say, "Dude, that's not cool. I'm not going to."
That was a great scene. The stuff between Damien and Mark, actually everything between Damien and Mark is good.
Yeah.
And the one at the end is good, where Damien's like, well, listen, I've crossed the Rubicon. I'm going to become the Antichrist. I'm going to take over.
You can come with me.
You can come with me. You can sit at my right hand, and you know, we can rock, you know. And Mark is like, no, I'm not going to hang out and be the Bobby Kennedy to Satan. And
the way to be strong.
Yeah,
Mark.
And so Damien, Darth Vader's him too, and you know, and then gets all wussy. I didn't do anything, which of course is definitely going to quell everyone's suspicions.
It's just all that. It's all that. Like it's just. I mean, I think overall it's just kind of a mess. I mean, that's what I keep coming back to. It's like there's corporate intrigue. There's a weird thing going on with the corporations. He's got what ends up at the end, like 3 guardians.
Yeah.
Although I had written down, I forgot which one it was. He was like kind of like asking him all these questions and stuff, and I immediately thought he should be like, "So, Damien, do you like gladiator movies?" weird
that
Totally.
scene did read.
Oh, it's the corporate
Totally.
guy. It is very like you know like he should possibly be in a sex offender's list.
It read that way, and I wanted to know if that was on. I think it was actually unintentional and just lazy and stupid.
Well,
I
because
don't
at
think
the time in the 70s, people weren't obsessed about child molesters like we are now.
Well, I mean, but you know, Tony's right. That
like
Peter Graves gag was sometime
True.
around there. You know,
You're right. No, but I would have liked. I think what Drew said is absolutely dead on. What he said earlier about how it needed to be more character driven, and I think it would have been great if they would have gotten rid of the whole corporate thing because that was just stupid. I mean, the way they did it was wrong. They could have. I suppose we needed there to be something to kind of pave the way for whatever's going to happen in the third one, but. I think it would have been really interesting to find out where these watchers are coming from, these protectors. I would have liked to have seen something, because, I mean, like, there's that one scene where they're all at the cotillion or wherever it is, and Lance Henriksen just kind of catches the eye of the guy who's the corporate guy. I have them all written down, but I don't have it out.
Robert Foxworth.
Yeah, him. They sort of nod, and I'm like, do they know? I mean, I'm assuming they know each other from the meetings, you know, from the protector meetings. But we never get to see that. And
there's
it
a newsletter
really
probably.
To see.
Just have an annual ski retreat.
Exactly. Or ice skating.
Well, they probably do. It's probably like a Tony Robbins retreat, and nobody wants to go to it. It sounds lame, but it's it's like live your dreams, and actually you pay $2,500 and do a deal with the devil. And
who's going to help the Antichrist? You are.
And Anne Rand is the speaker.
Help the Antichrist. It's going to be great. Team building
man,
and fun in the Lido deck.
Right, exactly. Yes, and they'll be eating deviled eggs, and maybe Satan himself actually comes out and does the final speech on like Sunday afternoon.
Maybe I could cut like another one where every time something weird happens that isn't directly with Damien, like a little Underwood deviled ham devil comes up and goes, ah.
I want to know if Damien ever gets into the My Dad Can Beat Up Your Dad contest.
Yeah. No, well, we're gonna find out. I mean, I honestly believe that they could turn around today and ignore the last movie, and they could make a full-on, long American horror TV series covering the same material.
Yeah, but it's got.
You could do a great TV show based off The Omen.
Yeah.
It could even be. You could even do more with him and Mark, where it's like almost like a Cain and Abel kind of thing.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you could stretch this out for seasons.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's a mess, is there's tons of little bits that would make something awesome. Instead, we end up with lots of splatter and lots of just weird. Also, man, like I know it's a horror movie, but how does a train sneak up on you?
Right.
Especially when you are expecting to get killed any second now.
Like.
Yeah.
Wow, man.
I thought that actually was clumsily done.
I really, maybe it's just because Gregory Peck is so awesome, but the more we talk about it, these are just the lamest heroes ever.
Yes.
True.
that actually was really quite. I thought that was clumsily done. The whole business with the guy hanging on the side of the train that felt cheesy, like on the level of Nilbog cheesy. I mean,
well, even from the beginning, I mean, what was the point of dragging? I guess the character's name is Michael, into the cave and then having him die immediately instead of because usually at least every person who dies has at least passed a little bit of information on to another person. It's usually like, okay, so the ants,
it was so that the knives would be in the cave. They were conveniently tucked away.
But what I'm saying is that guy didn't have to be there for that. He could have gotten out and told somebody.
What is your complaint again? Is it that? I'm
just saying that. What was the point of that character? That's kind of annoyed me. That I guess I just want these people to at least have died for a reason, and most of them die for a reason. Like most of them have passed along some piece of information to the next person, so that now that person's kind of like, whoa, that was weird. But that guy just died for no reason, and I kind of felt bad for him.
By the way, make it a point to bring up the woman, who dies by truck. But if I remember correctly, and I have to maybe rewatch it again, she doesn't go, hey, when I dug up the statue again and picked up where Bugenhagen left, by the way, I found him and his buddy under sand underneath this cathedral.
No, they do. That was the whole point, was that they said, we have found his body, and by his remains, we also found all this other stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I totally...
And she wants to tell William Holden about it, but he doesn't want to listen to anything.
Yeah, because that's what William Holden says. He's like, it hasn't been proven that that's who they found.
He's just redoing the Gregory Peck part. He's literally acting the Gregory Peck part, and the difference is that Lee Grant turns out not to be doing the Lee Remick part. She's doing something else. But
she's the nanny.
Yeah.
The nanny, yeah. And it turns out that she's the second wife, which makes me realize that she actually only ever married him even just to be the protector of... Damien.
Sure. The Satan agency sent her to do this gig. It's amazing.
Pretty well connected.
No, they are something. They could give FedEx and UPS a run for their money. They're pretty... they're very well equipped.
I know it should, because, they set up, even the Bible, they can quote scripture, et cetera, that he screams and yells in the first one when they try to take him to a church, but yet he's sitting there hanging out with a Bible that has like a cross on it.
That bothered me too.
I was like, wait a second, and you can go either way on that, but like also.
Good problem. Thank you for bringing that up. That's
way I fan wanked that is like, okay, maybe now that he's older, he has a little bit more resistance.
That's what I was kind of thinking.
To things like that.
Yep.
But the other thing about a lot of it, and you could still get out of it, like you could make the argument, but a lot of like academies and stuff like that, they have some type of like, you go to church or do some kind of something on Sundays, Like a lot of institutions have that. It would be weird, especially if you were being trained to become a president,
right.
Senator.
He has to be able to hang out in churches. Has to.
But he can't. He's like freaked out.
Drew's right. He got over it. If we assume that this really is Omen 2, then Damien no longer has that vulnerability because it's gone. And besides, what popped into my head when he's walking with the Bible, Julia goes, he can't carry the Bible around and burn him. And I was like, no, because the devil can use Scripture for his own purposes.
No, that's what I was.
I will say this though, like in defense, like I came up with a way around it in my head. In defense of what Tony and Julie are saying, I shouldn't have to do that.
That's right.
That is
true.
Part of my problem with this movie. It is inconsistent with the first one. Like if rules are established in your horror movie series, you have to observe those rules.
Yeah.
Or you piss me off.
Although, come on, Drew. Truly, we've liked a lot of movies. Maybe not on this show. I don't know, but that break rules set up by previous ones. I know that I love the Evil Dead series, but it makes no sense at all.
The Evil Dead thing is because Evil Dead 2 is a remake, and that's the important thing to go into with that. But also, this is I would akin this series to something more like the Alien series, although I like the Alien movies. I like the first Omen better than the first Alien, but as a series, the Alien series is very classy. It's got a lot of money pumped into it. It's got good actors. Even the lesser sequels are directed by interesting directors.
Yeah.
This is
like that.
This is not a B movie. This is not some independently financed thing. This is, you keep pointing out, this is a nice looking studio product that had lots of editors and lots of people thinking about these things, and they should have been thinking about them.
That's well said. Okay, here's what I want to do. I want to, because we're about to wrap up the childhood of Damien, and next week we'll be back with Damien at the evil baby grown up.
Can I just jump in and say, by the way, that the kid who plays Damien is awesome. I just want to give him.
He really
good.
is.
He's quite good.
So I want to talk a little bit as we wrap this part up, and then we'll go to final thoughts. Tell me about your feelings about the remake and whether it handles any of these questions any better or worse. And I know that you have different feelings about that remake. And then we'll get our final impressions, and then we'll come back next week with
my feelings on the remake.
By the way, if we do a wrap up of the movie, I think the thing truly is crappy. Truly crap. The
remake?
No. This movie.
Oh, this movie.
Omen 2. The quote at the end just feels like, okay, that's a quote. There's some titles, some words. Thanks.
Well, no, you'll get a chance to do final thoughts on the Omen 2. I just wanted to we were talking about what goes right and what goes wrong, and I was curious about your thoughts about whether the 2006 remake gets it any better. Thinking about this stuff,
I think the 2000 remake let me start by saying I don't like. You always hear a lot about unnecessary remakes, and I will say if there ever was an unnecessary remake, it was the 2006 Omen, because it follows. There is barely anything that is different about it. It's basically like the only thing that is different about it is that it's got these weird sort of music video-esque dream sequences and intercuts with these bizarre satanic imagery. So it looks actually already far more dated than a lot of the things in the original. But does it get it better than the sequel? Yes, absolutely, because it's still
a shot-for-shot remake of the original.
Yeah, even the most of the dialogue is verbatim the same. I mean, the only thing I can really say is that Liv Schreiber makes a lot of different choices with his character than Gregory Peck does. He plays him a lot softer. He's a lot less masculine than Gregory Peck. I mean, although how could you not be?
He's more boring and less likable. Because he's like, I'm not saying it's like, I'm not going to defend the remake too much because I don't think it's a great film, but it's definitely much more worthy of the Omen title than this turd. I mean, this is a terrible movie in my opinion. Like, I just, I would almost wish, though, like having this conversation, that they would remake The Omen 2 so they could adjust it with some of the things that we've discussed about this very night. Because I do think you could fix this. That's the thing. What I want is the good movies to not be remade, and the ones where it's just a mess. Somebody with some substance take that and make it not messy.
I don't mind remakes the way a lot of people do. Like, occasionally you get something interesting that is both respectful to the original but does its own thing. Like, I thought Peter Jackson's King Kong, excellent film. I thought the remake of Dawn of the Dead is a lot of fun.
I don't mind remakes at all, any more than I mind the fact that Broadway brings back, you go see Hamlet 2 years ago and you see Hamlet again this year, and it's, who's playing Hamlet this time? I don't mind.
I do hope when you do a remake that they make more. They should have changed more about the Omen. That's kind of, I think, the thing that I would get at, because it is so much alike. I would just say, like, yeah, you could watch that, but it's actually very dated. The 2006 is actually far more dated feeling than the 70s one. So
but that's the problem, dude. Like, that's the crux of it. How could you make a remake? Like, I'm going to make this remake. Now, granted, it was designed by committee. Again, last time I went over it, I don't think anybody set out to make a bad movie. So I don't know where it failed. But somewhere along the way, the choices they made it a more dated movie, a colder movie. It just lacked the tone. If you're going to make
I think it really boils down to also
what about the first one, and at least have that kernel. Start with the kernel. What made this good? And I don't think they ever even looked at that. They said, it's a demon movie, let's remake it. It's colder. Like, there's none of the tone. And I've seen this happen time.
I also think that's also, though, like, Richard Donner is such a good director. I mean, and I think that's...
Well, don't do a remake unless you can find somebody who can hold up to the...
Yeah.
But, again, if we're talking about the remake of The Omen versus Omen 2, the remake still wins. I mean, if we're talking about all of these movies stacked against the original, just don't watch any of the other ones and just watch the original, pretend the others don't exist, which would be my ultimate
Yeah, you can
advice.
either watch it by itself, or you can think of it as, this is my impression, I haven't watched the third one, and I'm down for this being a full series, but you can watch these movies, a lot of these things. A lot of times there's a famous movie with a lot of sequels, and I only watch the first. I don't watch the sequels. I just don't ever get around to it. And, most of these things can usually stand alone as a work. But, franchises become franchises, and that's a different thing, where stuff that was vague becomes solidified, and you either like the choices that solidify or you don't. And like in this one, they decided, last time it was too vague. This time we're going to have a crow show up whenever Satan's power shows up. And if we can't have a crow get in there, we're going to have the choir singing. And so that's they're creating rules, because anytime you have a sequel, you kind of start creating rules, even though you're breaking rules as well. So that's a sequel problem. Okay, so final thoughts, and we should probably do them fairly quickly because I want to get final thoughts and endorsements, and then we will wrap it up, and we'll be back next week for the final chapter. So this has been great, though. What a great conversation. Julia, what are your final thoughts on Damien Omen 2?
Well, I guess to summarize, it's three things. One is they wasted a lot of time with a lot of business stuff and a lot of, even the thing with the aunt saying that she had millions of dollars, that she was going to inherit them if they would just split the boys apart. I mean, stuff like that where it's just a waste of time. They could have done without that, or done a better job of anything to do with business. And then instead focused on characters, on backstory of some of these other folks and that kind of thing. And then the fact that Satan has all this supernatural power, and there's no supernatural or even regular natural, power of good to fight it. Like, there's just no fight happening. So that kind of disturbed me. So those things are the negatives. But the one positive I will say is that it can be scary as hell sometimes, and I guess that's positive if you like scary movies and that's what you're looking for. So there's definitely some of those kind of holy crap moments. But like I said, not the best movie ever, but I think it's definitely got some good horror moments to it.
Cool. All right, Monsieur Drew.
I can really only
recommend.
I can what now?
And endorsements if you like, but go ahead.
Okay. I really, really can only recommend this movie if you're a rabid completist, because I just yes, it has one or two redeemable moments, but it's really it's not worth it. Just watch the original again and save yourself, a few hours of your time. It's a lot more enjoyable. This is not in any way, shape, or form a worthy follow-up to how great The Omen is. And I mean, is anybody listening to this podcast? I can't. They know how passionately I feel about that. As far as endorsements, we're going in a completely non-horror direction. My wife and I recently started watching Mad Men. We watched the first two seasons. Yes. We're late on the uptake about that, but it was because a coworker kept calling her Joan, and so because apparently she has a coworker that thinks she looks like this character Joan, so we started watching it because of that. And everybody's been slathering praise on it for years, so I'm just kind of Johnny-come-lately about this, but man, what a great show. If you were like me and you have not been watching this, Netflix this sucker right now, or go out and buy a DVD set. You steal it off the internet. I don't know what you have to do. Watch Mad Men. It is amazing.
No, it truly is. It truly is very, very good. That's okay. Excellent. Wow. So thumbs down on Damien Omen 2. Thumbs up on Mad Men. Discovering Mad Men the first. That's outstanding. All right, Monsieur Tony. Final thoughts. Damien Omen 2.
Like I said, I think the ending is complete crap. From the by the way, I'm your guardian. Oh crap. To just the miscellaneous dumb quote. Just by the end I was like, oh, man, that was really a letdown amongst many letdowns. However, it did give us tons of awesome, the elevators death scene is freaking amazing. The under the ice is terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of little bits, and it just wants to be just something different than it is, and it never quite congeals for me, and that's a shame because the first one is so good. So I think a highlight reel is the best way to watch this movie. Like if that exists somewhere on YouTube, just do that. Like really, truly, just spare yourself the kind of the messy mess parts, because the highlight reel version of it would probably be actually pretty good. And by the way, Mad Men is really awesome. I've actually, my non-horror thing I've been doing is watching the very Larry David-esque Clown from Denmark, which
spelled with a K, right?
Yeah. Oh, KLOWN, or also the W can be a V, and it is cringe-inducing. Like the worst thing a character can do at any given moment, worst possible time, all the time. It's basically what it is. Like, how can you say the worst thing at the worst time all the time and do the worst thing? But it is, in that way, is amazing. And Draft House Films is still showing the movie all over, which is not safe for anyone who gets offended at anything. But if you like The Hangover, you might like it. If you like a combination of The Hangover and, Curb Your Enthusiasm, it's probably, or the Todd Margaret show that David Cross is in. If you like all that, then it's good. But it's something else.
I have two things, having listened to you guys, that I want to say.
Yeah.
One is Episodes. That's the show that we've been watching.
It's wonderful.
Doing non-horror things,
really
which is awesome. It's Matt LeBlanc and a bunch of British, well, not a bunch of British people, but these two British actors who are just brilliant. And then the other thing is for everybody to go to their local theater on Thursday and watch Manos Hands of Fate with the Riff Tracks live broadcasts.
Oh, yeah.
Have we bought our tickets for that already?
No.
Oh, we got to get our ticket. What if it sells out?
And what if we have no babysitter? We got to get a babysitter too.
It might be sold out. That was something else. Oh yeah, and maybe I should wait till next week, but I'm going to go ahead and in advance pitch. I am going to be at a local convention, Here There Be Monsters Con, on Sunday, August 26th, and hopefully, if all goes well, I'll be selling copies of Psychom 3.
Awesome.
Yay.
Awesome.
I think it's really cool. They're doing this little kind of mini convention. There's a lot of cool people there too, and seems to be a thing. I'll probably pitch it next week too, because it's Sunday, August 26th, starting at noon. I'll put
very cool.
Too.
My final thoughts on Damien Omen 2 is, if you want good horror movies, there's a million ones that you would watch, and you'd include the first Omen. But if you're looking for franchises to watch, you might watch the Omen franchise, and so you'd have to watch this one. And I've seen a million worse sequel horror movies than this. I think it's a mess. I think it's schlocky, but I think there are lots of really neat little scenes that, really impressed me. And so I recommend it as the second part of a franchise that you're getting into. I don't recommend it as any kind of movie that you would just watch by itself. That just strikes me as insane. So,
it's sorry to interrupt, but it is kind of funny because we get outraged at when the movie is this lavish and done badly. But I'll watch the most terrible, just crap, just total crap, and be like, oh, well, that was fun for total crap.
Well, Drew said it himself. He said, these movies are expensive, so in theory, you've got the best of the best. You've got every expert in the world who's supposed to be around to check on things and to double-check things. But we know that doesn't always work.
Yeah, your expectations were too high.
I love the first movie out of this series, and I just kind of wish they would have left well enough alone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I just think it's funny, like in retrospect, where I have watched so many movies that are so much more terrible than this.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I still enjoyed this movie.
Straight up.
So that's why I give it a faint recommend.
I would like to punch this movie in the face. I really would.
And let's see. I actually had an endorsement, but I've completely lost it. I've lost my notes. So there we go. No, it's fine. It's totally fine.
Alex,
I'll bring it back next week. Isn't that sad? I've been talking for now like 90 minutes, and so I've just completely lost all semblance of understanding of what the hell I was going to endorse. But the guest in the chat room says you probably don't like Psycho 2 either. I don't know who's that's for, but I like the movie a lot better than the book.
I like Psycho 2? Actually, Psycho 2 it's fun. I don't know, like it's a stupid movie. Psycho 2.
That's the problem.
That's a whole
sequels...
other kettle of fish. Like I haven't seen Psycho 2 in forever.
Yeah. But sequels often are quite stupid, and that's just the way. Unfortunately, that's the way that it works. Is that and this is not really a defense. It just sort of is what it is. That often.
Well, and I admit there's a certain degree of hypocrisy on my part because I love the Friday the 13th series. I have a tattoo on my arm of the Friday the 13th series, and there are some stupid, terrible Z-grade movies in that franchise. So totally.
I'm still a big fan of Jason Goes to Hell. Actually, I gotta admit.
And that movie completely. You want to talk about ignoring the lore from all the other movies. That movie completely, just
subverts. It does. It completely subverts the continuity of the other movies. Suddenly, Satan has black ichor in his heart. Jason has black ichor in his heart, and Creed or whatever the heck he's called, the Jason Hunter is.
Geez, I could have told you before you said Creed.
Anyway, it's the guy who was in Cooley High, and anyway,
not horror, but I love Superman 2, which I just watched again today.
Superman 2 is awesome. Okay, like
Superman 2 is a great movie.
Terrence Stamp alone.
I like Superman 3 because I like Lana Lang. I like everything that doesn't involve Richard Pryor. I really like Superman 3.
I didn't like Superman 3.
We are way off course at this moment, gentlemen. We must pay the ferryman, and we must get to the other side. So, let's wrap it up. I really, really appreciate you being on. I appreciate people listening. If you are around, come to the Facebook page and link us and share the Facebook page with other people and like us on Facebook and give us multiple stars so that other people will find out about the Castle Dracula podcast. Come on around to the Facebook page and suggest things because we will listen. It's like Elizabeth on the Facebook page said, "You guys got to do the Omen," and so the Omen we have done. Yeah.
To come on, maybe in the future we can have them say their names so they're not anonymous. Because it is kind of a pain to get a thing. So we have guest 3, and
yes, I think that's Damien.
Hey, guest 3, that way, if you're a friend on Facebook as well, if we bring up something, then we know, oh yeah, well you were on the other night. And I really, really appreciate it. It's awesome when people, come.
It is. It's so great. It's really wonderful. So, all right. I can't wait to come back next week and find out how Damien takes over the planet Earth, or does he? I will.
Well, we can always hope that there's a part 5 where he goes into space because it's working.
Don't read the Bible and get spoilers.
And Pinhead, right? If Jason and Pinhead can go into space, Damien can.
Well, yeah. I mean, maybe he'll take over the Earth, and then Kirk Cameron will have to lead a ragtag band.
That is the best crossover concept ever, Jason. I think you should go write that fanfic right after we're done here.
This is one of, if I ever get Scrooge McDuck money, this is one of the many, many things that I will finance. Is
Damien 7 left behind 8
versus Damien. This is a thing I want. I wish I want to live in the dimension where this exists. That is gold.
Well, somebody's got to Photoshop at least a poster of Kirk Cameron taking on Damien.
Facebook fans, if any of you out there have Photoshop skills, this is your homework assignment. Got it?
Give us Left Behind versus Damien. I want to see that. All right.
Okay.
Have a fantastic week, everybody. I will talk to you soon.
All right. Bye everybody.
Night.
Bye.